The day after high school graduation, I dragged my duffel bag back to my parents' house in the city for what felt like the 100th time. When Mom opened the front door, she only said one thing. "Since you are done with finals, you can stay here for a bit." It was always for a bit, never for good. There were 3 kids in the family. My older brother and younger sister lived with our parents, while I was the only one who lived with our grandparents. My brother Liam had his own study, my sister Chloe had a bedroom all to herself, and I was the only one who slept on the living room couch. My toothbrush was a complimentary one from a hotel. My slippers were thin guest slippers, and even my towel was a spare. I did not even have a house key. Mom used to say, "You do not come back often anyway. What do you need a key for?" But this time, they finally gave me one. Liam dropped the brass key into my palm and smiled. "We are heading out on vacation for a few days, so you can get some proper rest here at the house." On the coffee table, 4 boarding passes to Hawaii were laid out in a neat row. Dad, Mom, Liam, and Chloe. None for me. Looking at this key I had waited 12 years for, I suddenly laughed. Turns out, it was not an invitation home. It was a reminder that it was time for me to leave. "What are you spacing out for?" Liam waved a hand in front of my face. "Keep that key safe. We are leaving first thing tomorrow morning. If you lose it, you will be locked out." Chloe walked out of her room, holding a pile of sundresses. "Mom, should I pack this blue one? Will it wash me out in photos?" Mom walked over. "No, our Chloe looks gorgeous in blue. Pack that white one too. It will look beautiful against the beach." "But white gets dirty so easily." "If it gets dirty, Mom will wash it for you." "What are you worried about?" She said it so naturally, as if a daughter's clothes getting dirty meant a mother was supposed to wash them. But gripping that key, I suddenly remembered years ago when I got my winter coat cuffs coated in mud. Terrified of burdening Grandma, I crouched by the farmhouse sink, scrubbing it myself for a long time. The winter water was bone-chilling, and my fingers went numb in minutes. I did not dare stop, because I had to wear it to school the next day. Later, my hands developed severe chilblains. The skin cracked, healed, and cracked again. Even now, faint scars lingered on the backs of my hands. Dad was still looking at travel blogs on his phone. "We leave the house at 6:30 tomorrow morning. Get to the airport by 7:30 for our 10 o'clock flight. We will drop our bags at the resort, hit the beach in the afternoon, and get a big seafood dinner tomorrow night." Liam leaned over and glanced at the screen. "Go easy on the seafood. Chloe has already gained enough weight." Chloe immediately bristled. "Mom, look at him. He is making fun of me again." Mom laughed and played peacemaker. "We will just lock him out of the hotel room when we get there." They discussed the beach, the sunsets, and the restaurants with boundless excitement. No one asked if I wanted to go, and no one felt I should. I stood on the sidelines like a piece of forgotten luggage no one remembered to put away. A long time passed before Mom finally remembered me. She turned her head and said, "Right, Nora, what do you want to eat these next few days? There are leftovers in the fridge, and some frozen pizzas. If you are too lazy to cook, just order DoorDash." I said whatever was fine. She let out a breath, as if relieved. "That is good. You grew up out in the country with your grandparents, so you must know how to take care of yourself." I nodded. "Yes, I am very good at taking care of myself. When I had a fever as a little girl, I knew how to run a washcloth under cold water and put it on my own forehead. When it rained and no one came to pick me up, I knew how to hold my backpack over my head and run all the way home. The year Grandma's arthritis flared up, I learned how to cook oatmeal, run the washing machine, and pay the electric bill online. I had always been very good at taking care of myself, so they were relieved enough to forget that I was just a girl who had just finished high school, barely 18 years old. Dad checked the time. "It is getting late. Nora, go take a shower. Mom will get you some pajamas in a minute." "No need, I brought my own." My luggage was still sitting in the entryway. It was an old canvas duffel bag. The zipper had broken once, and Grandma had meticulously stitched it back together with heavy black thread. I grabbed my change of clothes and walked into the bathroom. 4 towels hung on the wall. The gray one was Dad's, the beige was Mom's, the navy was Liam's, and the pink was Chloe's. There was none for me. I stared at those 4 towels for a long time, then turned and grabbed the bathroom door handle, intending to go ask Mom which one I could use. But hushed voices drifted in from the living room. "Chloe, just be reasonable. She is only staying a few days. Once we get back from the trip, we will put her on a train back to your grandparents' place." My hand felt glued to the door handle. The voices continued. Chloe sounded muffled and annoyed. I just do not want to share a space with her. She smells like dirt, and all her stuff looks like it came from a thrift store. Mom lowered her voice to coax her. It is just for one night. We are leaving tomorrow anyway. Then why can she not just sleep in the living room? Liam's voice chimed in. I am telling you right now, she cannot sleep in my room either. I have important college prep stuff on my desk. What if she messes with it? Mom said I would not snoop, but Liam chuckled. Who knows? She is from the country. Who knows what kind of bad habits she picked up? Chloe immediately agreed. Exactly. Whenever she comes back, I just feel totally on edge. Everything was perfect when it was just the four of us. Dad sighed. Her coming back was super sudden, right when we were about to leave. But since she is already here, she has to stay for a few days before we send her back. Stay for a few days before we send her back. I had heard that phrase countless times. When I was little, I asked Mom why Liam and Chloe got to live with them while I could not. Mom said money was tight in the city, and I had people taking good care of me at Grandma's. I asked Dad why Liam got to transfer to the nice suburban schools and I could not. Dad said it was because Liam won the draw. I was 3 that year, and Chloe was not born yet. Mom and Dad were moving to Chicago to start a business. They could not afford childcare for 2 kids in the city, so they said they would draw straws. Whoever drew the long straw went to the city. Dad drew for 4-year-old Liam, and Liam won. So Liam went with them to the city, and I stayed out in the Midwest countryside with my grandparents. For many years after that, I always thought, if only Dad had drawn the winning straw for me, if I was the one taken away, would I have my own bedroom? Would I have a mom who checked my homework every night? And a dad who drove me to school? I even secretly hated those straws, hating whatever luck separated me from my parents. But right now, I realized winning a draw did not matter. What mattered was who they actually wanted to take with them. In the living room, Mom was still pleading with Chloe. We will talk about your sister after we get back from Hawaii. She grew up with your grandparents. Nobody taught her a lot of things. So just do not hold it against her. Nobody taught me. So I was dirty, I was tacky, I lacked boundaries. But nobody ever stopped to think about why nobody was there to teach me. I did not want to listen anymore. I pushed the door open. Excuse me, which towel should I use? In an instant, everyone's expressions froze, looking like they had just been caught hiding a terrible secret. Mom recovered first, standing up in a panic. Nora, you. I cut her off. Which towel do I use? Mom went pale. Dad frowned. Nora, do not overthink things. Okay, so which towel do I use? Liam clicked his tongue in annoyance. Chloe looked down at her dress. Mom stared at me, suddenly sighed, and walked toward the bathroom. I will find you a new one. We have some unopened ones in the linen closet. Disposable toothbrushes, disposable slippers, unopened towels. The things left for me in this house were always brand new and sealed, because my presence was always temporary. Mom pulled a pristine white towel from the cabinet and handed it to me. Her face showed a trace of exhaustion, as if my behavior was completely unreasonable. Nora, Mom really did not mean it like that. We were just worried you would not be comfortable here. I looked down, pretending I did not notice her tone, and said, I know. I took the towel and went back into the bathroom. As the hot water rained down, I looked at my own palm. Just moments ago, there was a key here, a key I had hoped for 12 years. But there are some doors that, even if you can unlock them, you can never truly walk through. When I stepped out of the shower, Mom still wanted me to sleep in Chloe's room, but Chloe just sat on her bed and refused to say a word. Mom looked at her for a moment, then laid a thin fleece blanket on the living room couch for me. Do not turn the AC down too low tonight. You will catch a cold. We are leaving early tomorrow, so we will not wake you. You sleep in. I nodded. She remembered something else and pointed to the coffee table. Keep the house key safe. Since we are gone, bring any Amazon packages inside. Water the plants on the balcony every other day, and take out the trash regularly so it does not smell in the summer heat. Dad looked up. If maintenance comes by to check the pipes, do not just open the door. Call us first, Liam said. I locked my bedroom door. Do not try to go in there. Chloe added. Do not touch anything on my vanity, especially my makeup brushes. The summer Liam finished high school. Mom and Dad took him backpacking through Europe. The summer, Chloe finished middle school. They took her to Disney World. When it was my turn, all they gave me was a relentless list of chores and warnings. Seeing me nod, Mom started ushering Liam and Chloe to bed. Hurry up and brush your teeth. You will not be able to wake up tomorrow. Dad held up his phone. Last thing. I sent the resort confirmation to the group chat. Everyone take a look. As soon as he finished speaking, several notification chimes echoed through the living room. Mom's phone, Liam's phone, Chloe's phone. Only my phone remained silent. Dad seemed to realize something was wrong and looked up at me. Is Nora not in the family chat? Mom paused. I guess not. I will add her later. I said. No need. Dad did not seem to hear what I said. Before I could repeat it, Liam asked Dad, do you have my passport? Dad immediately stood up. Let me check. Is it in my carry-on or your mom's? He walked into the master bedroom, completely forgetting to ask what I had just said. The living room lights were quickly shut off, and the doors to the 3 bedrooms clicked shut one after another. I lay on the couch staring at the pitch-black ceiling, my mind completely blank. My phone buzzed. It was a call from Grandma. Nora, are you asleep? Not yet. Are you settling in okay? Did they cook you anything good? My throat tightened as I remembered my first dinner back in this house. Mom had made Chloe's favorite macaroni and cheese, baked Liam's favorite garlic steaks, and served Dad's favorite stuffed mushrooms. But absolutely no one remembered that I was severely allergic to mushrooms. I took a few deep breaths and said, yeah. Grandma seemed to sense something. She fell silent for a moment before asking, Nora, are you unhappy? No. If you are unhappy, just come home. Your grandpa bought a massive watermelon today, and it is chilling in the fridge right now. I tidied up your room, washed your quilt, and hung it in the sun. It smells wonderful. In that instant, I almost burst into tears. Mom and Dad did not have a room for me here, but Grandpa and Grandma did. It was not a temporary blanket on a couch, and it was not a corner my sister forcefully surrendered. It was my room. It had my bed, my wooden desk, and the walls were plastered with every honor roll certificate I had ever earned. Grandpa's loud voice boomed in the background. Tell the kid, whenever she wants to come back, I will drive the truck to the station to pick her up. I bit my lips so hard it hurt, just to keep a sob from escaping. Grandma spoke again. Nora, if something is bothering you over there, you speak up. In your entire life, there is no reason you should feel afraid to speak your mind in your own home. After hanging up, my phone screen went dark, and the living room returned to shadows. 3 slivers of light, accompanied by the sound of laughter, spilled from beneath the 3-bedroom doors. Grandma was right. In your own home, you shouldn't be afraid to speak your mind. The problem was, this wasn't my home. I wiped the tears from my face, opened the Amtrak app, and looked up the schedule. There was an 8:00 a.m. train heading back to my grandparents' town in the morning. I typed in my information and hit purchase. When the payment confirmation popped up, I let out a long, heavy exhale. From this house to my grandparents' farm was 750 miles. Over 12 years, I had made 48 round trips. There would not be a 49th. The next morning at 5 o'clock, before the sun was even up, Mom got out of bed. She woke Chloe up first, then got Liam. When she walked through the living room, her footsteps paused. I could feel her standing beside the couch looking at me for a moment, and then she gently pulled the fleece blanket a little higher over my shoulder. A second later, Chloe yelled, Mom, where are my sunglasses? She instantly turned and walked away. Coming, they are in your tote bag. I opened my eyes and watched her back disappear toward the hallway. Dad was putting his shoes on by the door. Liam was holding a camera, recording Chloe complaining about the early hour. I sat up. Mom saw I was awake and paused. Did we wake you? I shook my head. Perfect timing, Mom said. Nora, take a picture for us. Chloe shoved the camera into my hands. No one thought there was anything wrong with that request. The 4 of them stood by the front door. Dad had one hand on his rolling suitcase, Chloe linked arms with Mom, and Liam stood in the back, giving Chloe bunny ears. I pressed the shutter. Done. Chloe grabbed the camera and checked the screen, immediately smiling. Oh my God, I look so good in this one, Liam said. Send it to the family chat. Mom nodded. I will drop it in later. I looked down at my own phone. It was completely silent. Dad opened the front door, and the motion sensor lights in the hallway flickered on. They dragged their suitcases out. Mom looked back at me. She looked like she wanted to say something, but finally just said, Nora, be good. I nodded and said, okay. The door shut. Their voices were locked out, carried away by the elevator. The house fell entirely silent. I sat quietly for a few minutes, then picked up my canvas duffel bag from the floor and folded the clothes I had slept in, packing them away. I slung the bag over my shoulder and stood by the door. Inside the shoe rack, Liam's expensive sneakers took up 2 shelves, and Chloe's trendy leather boots were lined up perfectly. My shoes were the only ones I owned, currently on my feet. I wore them here, and I would wear them out. I opened the front door. The lock clicked, sounding exactly like it would if someone turned a key. Yet, in all these years, I had never once used a key to open this door. I placed that brass key on top of the shoe rack, closed the door, and went downstairs. When I got into my Uber, my phone rang. It was Mom, I answered. The background noise was loud, airport announcements, and Chloe's laughter. Nora, I just checked the Ring camera and did not see you in the house. Did you go out? Did you take the key? No. You went out without the key? Are we going to have to call a locksmith for you? You do not need a locksmith. I calmly cut her off. I am not going back. The other end of the line went dead silent. Mom seemed unable to process it. What do you mean you are not going back? I said. I am going home. Mom's voice completely changed. What home? You are already at home. I did not say anything. Through the receiver, I heard Chloe ask Mom what was wrong, and Liam's voice drifted over. What is Nora doing now? Dad took the phone, his voice dropping into a stern register. Nora, stop throwing a tantrum. We are already at the airport. You stay at the house and behave yourself. Whatever is bothering you, we will talk about it when we get back. I looked out the car window at the rapidly retreating city streets. I suddenly remembered the moment my final high school exams ended. Grandma was waiting for me outside the school gates. She was short, her face mostly hidden by the massive crowd of parents. But I spotted her instantly, because she was the only one waiting for me. Since I was a little girl, the only people who ever waited for me were her and Grandpa. I let out a breath. I am not throwing a tantrum. That place is just not my home. Mom, Dad, have a great trip. I hung up, opened my contacts, and blocked them, one by one. Delete. This time, I was not being sent away. I was going home. By the time the train finally pulled into the station, the sky was pitch black. I carried my old canvas duffel bag and followed the crowd toward the exit. The station was chaotic loudspeaker announcements, the clattering wheels of luggage, people shouting for their families. But I spotted my grandparents immediately. Grandpa was standing at the edge of the crowd, wearing his faded flannel shirt, craning his neck to peer into the exit. Grandma stood right beside him. She was small, half hidden by the people rushing past her. She was clutching a light cardigan in her hands. Even though it was the middle of summer, she was always terrified I would be cold. I walked out and called, Grandpa, Grandma. Grandma froze for a second, and the next moment, her eyes went red. Nora. She hurried toward me, but after 2 steps, her bad knees forced her to slow down. I rushed forward to meet her. She grabbed my hand, rubbed it, then reached up to touch my face. You lost weight. I laughed. It has only been a day. But Grandma ignored me. She draped the cardigan over my shoulders, murmuring, The AC on those trains is freezing. Keep this on so you do not catch a chill. Grandpa reached out to take my bag. Give it here. I dodged his hand. It is not heavy. I can carry it. Grandpa's eyebrows shot up. I am not so old that I cannot carry a single bag. I had no choice but to hand it over. In that moment, my nose suddenly stung. At my parents' house, my luggage sat in the entryway, untouched by anyone from the moment I arrived to the moment I left. But here, the second I stepped off the train, Grandpa fought to carry my bag, and Grandma worried I was cold. Going home and visiting someone else's house truly felt completely different. On the way back, Grandpa drove his old Ford pickup truck. Grandma and I sat in the cab with him. The night wind blew through the open windows, carrying the smell of the fields and the damp earth. There were hardly any streetlights on the country roads, just a few scattered porch lights in the distance. Grandma held my hand the entire ride. She did not ask why I had come back so suddenly, nor did she ask if I had fought with my parents. She just said, I left some homemade chicken soup on the stove and made you scrambled eggs. The watermelon is still chilling in the fridge. You can eat as soon as we get back. I kept my head down and hummed in agreement. Grandma's hands were rough, her palms were calloused, and her knuckles were slightly swollen from arthritis. These were the hands that had stitched my clothes, scrubbed my mud-stained coats, felt my forehead when I had a fever, and gently patted my back through countless moments of heartbreak. I suddenly remembered the look on Mom's face when she handed me that sealed, brand-new towel. Perhaps she truly harbored no malice. She was just used to it, used to treating me like a guest, used to giving me the spare, temporary, disposable things. But Grandma was different. Nothing she gave me was ever a spare. The porch light was on at the farmhouse. Before we even pulled into the driveway, I could see the light on in my bedroom window. Grandma said, "I cleaned your room this morning. I let your quilt air out in the sun all day. It smells wonderful." I pushed the front door open. The old oak tree was still in the yard, and the porch swing was exactly where it always was. The house smelled like hot food. My room was not huge, but it was spotless. The bedsheets were my favorite shade of light blue. The quilt was folded neatly, and my ragged old stuffed bear sat right on the pillow. My pen holder and desk lamp were exactly where I left them on the desk, right next to stacks of honor roll certificates and spelling bee ribbons from first grade all the way through senior year. Standing in the doorway, I suddenly found it hard to step inside. Grandma brought the soup in. "What are you spacing out for? Eat first." I sat down at the desk. The soup was the perfect temperature, and the scrambled eggs had absolutely no onions in them. Grandma knew I hated onions. She knew I was severely allergic to mushrooms. She knew I hated sleeping with bright lights on. She knew my wrists ached after writing for too long. And she knew that whenever I was sad, I liked to keep my head down and stay perfectly quiet. No one had to tell her these things. She simply kept her eyes on me. So she remembered. As I was eating, tears suddenly spilled from my eyes and dropped right into my bowl. Grandma instantly panicked. "What is wrong? Did you burn your tongue?" I shook my head. Grandpa set his wrench down on the counter, his voice turning dark. "Did your parents treat you badly over there?" I shook my head again, but the tears fell faster. Grandma sat next to me and pulled me into her arms. "Go ahead and cry." She gently patted my back. "You are home now. If you want to cry, cry." Hearing the words, "You are home," the dam finally broke. I buried my face in Grandma's shoulder and bawled like a little kid. I cried for the missing boarding pass, for the key that was 12 years late, and for the living room couch. I cried for those 4 towels in the bathroom that did not belong to me, and I cried for myself for the little girl who had spent the last 15 years trying so desperately to be well-behaved, trying not to be a burden, trying not to make anyone dislike her. She had waited so long, and she finally did not want to wait anymore. The next morning, Mom and Dad arrived, and they did not come alone. Liam and Chloe were with them. When their SUV parked out by the dirt road, I was on the porch helping Grandma snap green beans. Hearing the engine, Grandpa walked out of the house, his face instantly darkening. Mom was the first out of the car. Her eyes were red and swollen. She looked like she had not slept all night. Dad followed closely behind, carrying several shopping bags full of gifts. Liam was wearing a baseball cap, looking deeply uncomfortable. Chloe was clutching her phone, scowling, as if she still had not recovered from the outrage of her canceled Hawaii vacation. Seeing me, Mom's lips trembled. "Nora." I kept my head down, dropping a snapped bean into the bowl. "Why are you here?" Mom's eyes welled up again. "You ran off all by yourself. How could we not come?" Dad chimed in. "We tried calling you all day yesterday and could not get through." "Your mom was worried sick." I did not say anything. Grandma stood next to me, her voice icy. "Good that you were worried." Mom went pale. Grandma rarely spoke like that. She was usually the gentlest woman in the county. If a neighbor took extra vegetables from her garden, she would just smile. But today, she was not smiling. Dad set the bags down awkwardly. "Mom, Dad, we came here to have a proper talk with Nora." Grandpa crossed his arms and glared. "Talk, then." Mom looked at me, softening her voice to a whisper. "Nora, the vacation was poor planning on our part. We really did book the tickets months ago, while you were still prepping for finals. We figured you would be exhausted after exams and probably would not want the hassle of traveling. Plus, you grew up here. We thought you would prefer to come back to the country anyway." I listened quietly. She sounded sincere, and her logic was not entirely flawed. It was not that they did not love me. It was just that whenever they made any decision, their default habit was to exclude me. They would consider how Liam needed to relax after his college prep, and they would consider what dresses Chloe should pack for photos. But when it came to me, they just made assumptions on my behalf. She probably will not want to go. She knows how to take care of herself. She will not mind. As Mom spoke, tears rolled down her cheeks. "And about what you heard last night, you are mad at us, aren't you?" I didn't answer, but she already knew. Chloe is young. She speaks without thinking. Your brother didn't mean it like that either. Chloe finally looked up, muttering defensively. I didn't even say anything wrong. I just said her clothes look thrifted. Was I lying? And my room is small. I don't want to share a bed with someone else. Is that a crime? She looked at me, a hint of entitlement in her voice. Nora, you have always lived at Grandma and Grandpa's anyway. You showing up out of nowhere makes us uncomfortable. Isn't that normal? Liam frowned and added, It is just one vacation. You are blowing this way out of proportion. It is not like we purposely tried to leave you behind. Besides, didn't Mom and Dad give you a key? Why did you just run off? I glanced up at him. So, in their eyes, a single key was enough. Enough to make up for 12 years of waiting outside doors. Enough to make up for not having a bedroom. Enough to make up for 4 plane tickets. And enough to make up for every day I spent feeling like an intruder in that house. I suddenly realized there was no point in explaining, because they had never lived it. Liam grew up with a private study. Chloe grew up with her own bedroom. They had no idea what it felt like to stand outside their own parents' front door waiting for someone to let them in. And they had no idea how soul-crushing it was to stare at 4 towels in a bathroom, knowing not a single one was yours. Before I could say a word, Grandpa slammed his heavy hand down on the patio table. Of course you think it is nothing. His voice wasn't a shout, but the sheer weight of it made everyone flinch into silence. Because you were not the ones left behind. Liam's face stiffened. Grandpa glared at him. You had parents who drove you to school. You had your own room. You had a desk. And you had a key. Chloe had a mother who washed her clothes, bought her dresses, and took her to amusement parks. He pointed a shaking finger at them. But what did Nora have? Chloe mumbled. She had you guys. Grandma let out a bitter scoff. Yes, she had us. And because she had us, you all washed your hands of her and slept soundly at night. Mom covered her mouth, sobbing openly now. Grandma looked at her, her own eyes blazing red. When she came to us at 3 years old, she would wake up in the middle of the night screaming for her mother. She cried until her throat bled. She got fevers and still just screamed for her mom. Later on, she stopped crying, and you told everyone how mature and well-behaved she was. She wasn't mature. She just figured out that no matter how loud she screamed, nobody was coming. Dad hung his head. Grandpa pressed on, his voice cracking. You told us money was tight, that you couldn't raise 2 kids in Chicago. Fine. But later, when the business took off, why didn't you ever mention bringing her back? You said Liam's schooling needed supervision, and Chloe was too young and needed care. Well, what about Nora? Didn't she need care? When she was sick, who drove her to the clinic? Who sat in the folding chairs at her parent-teacher conferences? When she made the honor roll, who framed her certificates? When her hands cracked and bled from the winter cold, who rubbed the ointment on them? Grandpa swiped at his eyes. We don't deny that you sent money. You are not evil parents. But a child is not a houseplant you can just throw water on every few months and expect to grow tall. You cannot be entirely absent and then have the nerve to blame her for not feeling close to you. Mom completely broke down, crying out loud. She looked at me, choking on her words. Nora, I am so sorry. Dad's eyes were bloodshot. His voice was entirely defeated. Your mom and I, we neglected you. It was the first time they had ever used the word neglected. I used to think that hearing them finally admit it would feel like a triumph. But it didn't. I just felt an overwhelming calm. It was like a torrential rain finally falling on a field after a decade-long drought. The seeds in the dirt were already dead. I said, I know you are not entirely devoid of love for me. Mom snapped her head up to look at me. I continued. But your love was too little. And it arrived way too late. I used to want it very badly. Now, I do not need it anymore. Tears streamed down Mom's face. Dad stood frozen, his lips moving as if to speak, but no sound came out. Chloe stared at the dirt, completely silenced. Liam looked away. Perhaps, in that exact moment, they finally realized what this was really about. It wasn't about a trip to Hawaii, and it wasn't about a brass key. It was about years, and countless moments, where I was always placed dead last. Mom asked through her tears, Will you ever come home again? I looked her in the eye and said softly, I am already home. Mom froze. I added, If I have free time in the future, I will come visit you. After I said that, the yard fell silent for a long time. The wind rustled through the oak tree. Mom lowered her head, her shoulders shaking violently with her sobs. I did not walk over to hug her, and I did not say anything crueler. I didn't hate them. Carrying hate is exhausting. But I didn't desperately want to forgive them either. Forgiveness requires energy I did not want to spend. I just did not want my world to revolve around begging for their love anymore. I had Grandpa and Grandma, and that was enough. Mom and Dad did not stay for dinner that day. Right before they got back in the car, Mom pulled a debit card from her purse and placed it on the patio table. "This is for your college tuition and living expenses." I wanted to hand it back, but Dad spoke first. "Nora, this is what we owe you." His voice lacked all of its usual commanding, suburban father authority. "We failed you in so many ways. Please do not refuse this." Grandma looked at me, letting me make my own choice. I stayed quiet for a moment, then pocketed the card. Not because I desperately needed the money. Grandpa and Grandma had been stuffing savings into a jar for my tuition for years, and I fully intended to get a summer job. But Dad was right. This was their obligation. I could stop expecting their emotional love, but there was no reason I had to excuse them from their financial responsibilities as parents. Seeing me take the card, a flicker of relief crossed Mom's eyes. She pulled out her iPhone. "Nora, let me add you to the family iMessage group." I looked at her. She panicked a little, immediately explaining, "We didn't purposely leave you out before. It's just that we didn't think of it." By the end of her sentence, even she couldn't stomach the sound of her own excuse. Didn't think of it. Those 4 words hurt infinitely more than doing it on purpose. Doing it on purpose meant I at least crossed their minds. Forgetting meant I didn't even have the right to exist in their thoughts. But I didn't call her out. I just nodded. A second later, my phone buzzed. I was pulled into a group chat originally named Happy Family of 4. Almost instantly after I joined, Mom changed the name to Our Family. Notifications popped up on the screen. "Mom, Nora is in the chat." "Dad, welcome Nora." "Liam, welcome to the group." I looked at those lines of text and just felt a profound sense of detachment. A long time ago, I used to dream about being included in a chat like this. Now that I was finally inside, my heart didn't skip a single beat. I typed 2 words, "Thank you." Then I tapped the chat settings and hit hide alerts. When I looked up from the screen, Mom was watching me. She probably didn't know what I had just tapped, but she tried her best to force a smile at me. It was the saddest, most tragic smile I had ever seen. After their SUV drove away, peace returned to the farmhouse. Grandma started gathering the uneaten fruit from the table, muttering, "They bought so much, it's just going to rot before we can eat it all." Grandpa was sitting on the porch swing, aggressively chewing on a toothpick. "Nora, yeah? If your heart hurts, you talk to us." I sat down next to him on the swing. "Grandpa, it really doesn't hurt anymore." He gave me a skeptical look. "Truly?" I nodded. "Truly." Grandma walked out of the house, heard us, and reached out to stroke my hair. "That is good. A person can't spend their whole life obsessing over what someone else refused to give them. You remember the people who loved you, and you keep your distance from the ones who made you hurt." I leaned my head on her shoulder and whispered, "I know." A few days later, I told them I was going into town to look for a summer job. Grandma immediately protested. "What job? You just finished 4 years of high school. You need to rest." Grandpa added, "We have your college money saved up. You don't need to go out there and suffer." I smiled. "I know you do, but I want to earn my own spending money. Plus, if I sit at the house all day, I'll go crazy." Grandma frowned. "Are you afraid of spending our money?" I shook my head. "No, I just want the experience. Honestly, I want to keep myself busy. If I am busy, I won't be tempted to check that muted group chat. I won't wonder if Mom texted me. I won't wonder if they actually regret it. And I won't wonder if things would have been different if they had just treated me like this years ago." There weren't many places hiring in our small town, but after asking around, I got a job at the local independent bookstore on Main Street. The owner, Mrs. Miller, was incredibly sweet. The bookstore was cozy, selling novels and stationery in the front, with a small back room full of tables where local kids came to read and do summer homework. Mrs. Miller asked if I had just graduated. I nodded. "How are your grades?" "Pretty good," I said. She smiled. "Can you tutor a bit?" Every summer, these kids come in here doing homework and they ask me math questions that give me a migraine. I said I could absolutely try. That was how I spent my summer organizing shelves, ringing up customers, labeling new arrivals, and occasionally helping middle schoolers with algebra. The pay was minimum wage, but Mrs. Miller included lunch. On my first day, she handed me a massive plate of sandwiches and potato salad. "Eat up, sweetheart. You are far too skinny." I stared at the plate for a second, a bit stunned. In the city, there was always someone implying I should take up less space, eat less, be less of a burden. But here, there was always someone filling my plate and telling me to eat more. The bookstore wasn't far from the farm. Every morning, Grandma boiled an egg and shoved a thermos of ice water into my bag. Grandpa insisted that working retail was exhausting, and every single evening at 5 p.m., he showed up to walk me home. I told him he didn't have to, and he claimed he was just taking a stroll. But his stroll magically always ended directly in front of the bookstore. Mrs. Miller would always laugh through the glass door. "Your grandpa's out on his stroll again." I smiled. That summer, I felt incredibly anchored. I walked out the door with the morning sun, walked home with the evening breeze, carried my own hard-earned cash in my pocket, and had a family waiting for me with dinner on the table. It felt like new, vibrant branches were finally growing out of the cracks in my life. The day the final state exam and scholarship results were released, I was in the back of the bookstore explaining a quadratic equation to an 8th grader. My phone suddenly started vibrating violently on the table. It was my high school principal, Mr. Davis. I picked it up, and before I could even say hello, his booming voice blasted through the speaker. "Nora, did you check your scores yet?" I blinked in surprise. "Not yet. Check them. Right now. Hurry." Mrs. Miller heard the commotion and hurried over. "The results are out?" My hands were suddenly shaking, which was crazy because I hadn't even been this nervous during finals week. I pulled up the state education portal, typed in my student ID and social security number, and waited as the page loaded. When the numbers finally appeared on the screen, the entire bookstore seemed to fall silent. I was valedictorian, ranked top 100 inches the entire state, a near-perfect SAT score. I stared at the screen for a solid minute. Over the phone, Mr. Davis's voice was hoarse with excitement. "Nora, valedictorian, top in the state. You just secured the governor's full-ride scholarship. I knew you had it in you." I gripped my phone, a massive lump forming in my throat. Mrs. Miller reacted faster than I did. She slammed her hand on the table and yelled, "Oh my lord, valedictorian!" The kids doing their homework all snapped their heads up to stare at me. The 8th grade boy who had been agonizing over his math worksheet a minute ago stared at me with wide eyes. "Whoa, you're a genius?" I couldn't help but laugh. "I did all right. Mrs. Miller practically sprinted out the front door, yelling to the hardware store owner next door, "Hey Jim, my girl here is valedictorian. #1 in the state." Within 30 minutes, half of Main Street knew. People came in to buy pens just to get a look at me. Parents dragged their kids in, pointing at me. "Look at her. You study hard and you can be like her." I was so embarrassed I wanted to hide behind the register. That evening, the principal and a reporter from the county newspaper came by the house. They wanted to do a short interview, highlighting the district's top graduate. When the camera pointed at me, the reporter asked, "Nora, who do you want to thank the most for your incredible success?" I didn't even hesitate. "I want to thank my grandma and grandpa." Standing off to the side, my grandparents completely froze. I looked at them. Grandpa was still wearing his faded flannel, and Grandma's hair was silver, her fingers bent from years of hard labor. I looked back at the camera. They are the ones who raised me. They cooked for me, drove me to school, and sat in every parent-teacher conference. After every single exam I ever took, they always told me that whether I got an A or an F, I could always come home. I took a deep breath. The only reason I made it to where I am today is because I knew that no matter what happened, someone was standing right behind me. By the end of it, my voice broke. Grandma looked down and wiped her eyes with her apron. Grandpa turned his head away, pretending to study the tractor calendar on the wall, but I saw his shoulders shaking. That night, the family group chat blew up. Dad texted first, "Nora, congratulations. Dad is so proud of you." Mom followed, "Nora, Mom is so incredibly happy for you. You worked so hard." Liam, "Wow, valedictorian. That is insane." Chloe, "Congrats." I looked at the messages. After a long time, I typed a single line, "Thank you." The chat went quiet for a few minutes. Then, Mom sent another message. "Nora, does it have to be this way between us?" I saw it. She quickly deleted it a second later, leaving only the gray automated text. Mom unsent a message. I stared at that little gray line for a few seconds, then placed my phone face down on the nightstand. I pretended I never saw it. When it came time to commit to a college, my counselor strongly suggested I apply to the out-of-state Ivy Leagues. With your transcripts, you can write your own ticket anywhere in the country. I looked at the list of universities, but ultimately committed to the top-ranked state university, about an hour and a half away by Amtrak. I figured that if Grandma's arthritis flared up or Grandpa felt sick, I could be on a train and be home by the afternoon. I also wanted to be able to come home on weekends just to have Sunday dinner with them. My counselor was a bit surprised. "Are you absolutely sure?" I nodded. "I am sure." He looked at me for a long time, then finally smiled. "All right, it is a fantastic university and a great program, as long as you know what you want." The day the official acceptance package arrived in the mail, Grandpa specifically changed into his Sunday church clothes to meet the mail carrier at the end of the driveway. When the postman handed him the thick envelope, Grandpa took it with both hands, holding it like it was a sacred artifact. Grandma practically buzzed around him in the kitchen. "Hurry up and open it!" Grandpa glared at her. "What is the rush?" "Something this big. Nora has to open it herself." I took a pair of scissors, carefully snipped the seal, and pulled out the acceptance folder. It was a beautiful navy blue cover with gold embossed lettering. My name was printed elegantly on the certificate inside, Nora. Looking at my name, I felt a profound, unbreakable sense of security. For years, I had lived my life waiting for other people to grant me a space, waiting for my parents to hand me a house key, waiting for them to remember they had a second daughter, waiting for that city house to leave a light on for me. But today, I had carved out a path entirely on my own. The university contacted me a week later. Because of my academic ranking, my state scholarship covered full tuition, and the Alumni Association was awarding me an additional freshman housing and living stipend. I told Grandma the news, and she was stunned. "They are paying for everything?" I nodded. "Full ride. And they are paying for my dorm and food." Grandpa slapped his thigh. "Fantastic. Just fantastic." He grinned until his eyes disappeared into wrinkles, then suddenly turned around to wipe a tear from his cheek. Grandma grabbed my hands, repeating over and over, "Our Nora is so brilliant." I squeezed her calloused hands tightly. "Grandma, once I graduate and make real money, I am going to buy you both whatever you want." Grandma immediately scolded me. "We don't need your money. You just go out there and live a good life. That is all we want." Grandpa agreed. "Exactly. You being happy is better than anything." I shook my head. "It is not the same. You spent your whole lives raising me. It is my turn to take care of you." Grandma's eyes went red, though she stubbornly muttered, "Silly girl." I just smiled and didn't argue. I knew they never wanted anything in return. The love they gave me was never a transaction, never a down payment for future loyalty. But I needed them to know that the little girl they sacrificed so much for was finally, truly grown up. A week before I left for college, Mom and Dad drove down one last time. This time, they didn't bring Liam and Chloe. Mom bought me a brand new, expensive rolling suitcase. It was light blue. She handed it to me and said, "I remember you used to like this color." She looked at me nervously, as if terrified I was going to tell her she was wrong. I just nodded and said, "Thank you." Dad pulled out the debit card from earlier in the summer and pushed it across the table. He had deposited more money into it. "When you get to campus, do not be too frugal," I said. "My tuition is fully covered, and my stipend covers housing." Dad's voice dropped to a near whisper. "Then just keep it for emergencies. Please do not reject it. Please." He sounded so fragile. I looked at the plastic card, and finally, I put it in my pocket. Mom's eyes glossed over with tears. She took a step forward, looking like she wanted to hug me. She raised her arms slightly, but then let them fall back to her sides. Finally, she just said, "Nora, when you get to your dorm, text Mom, okay?" I said, "Okay." Hearing that one word, she let out a massive breath, as if a weight had been lifted from her chest. When they drove away, Mom turned around in her seat to look at me multiple times before the car turned onto the main highway. I stood by the mailbox. I did not chase after their car, but I didn't back away into the shadows either. It felt like my parents and I had finally found our proper distance, not close, but far enough apart that we could no longer cut each other. The morning I left for college, Grandma was out of bed before dawn. She bustled around the kitchen, boiling eggs and making ham and cheese sandwiches. Grandpa checked my new blue suitcase over and over again. "Did you pack your ID? Your acceptance papers? Your debit card? Phone charger?" I laughed. "Grandpa, that is the 5th time you have asked," he huffed. "You are moving out into the real world. It pays to be careful." Grandma shoved a plastic grocery bag into the side pocket of my backpack. "Eat this on the train." I peeked inside. Sandwiches, hard-boiled eggs, 2 apples, and a Ziploc bag of washed grapes. I smiled. Grandma, they have a cafe car on the Amtrak. She waved her hand dismissively. That overpriced train food is nothing compared to home cooking. I didn't argue. I just zipped the bag shut. Before I walked out the front door, I went back to my bedroom one last time. The bed was perfectly made. The lamp was sitting neatly on the desk. The honor roll certificates were still proudly taped to the wall. On the windowsill, Grandma had placed a small mason jar filled with wildflowers she picked from the yard, yellow and white. Very ordinary, but incredibly beautiful. I held the handle of my suitcase and stood in the doorway for a long time. This room had sheltered me for so many years. From a tiny, abandoned 3-year-old to an 18-year-old college freshman, it had watched me stay up late studying, it had watched me cry into my pillow, and it had watched me hold my gold-lettered acceptance letter with a beaming smile. I knew I was going to travel to many new places, live in a dorm, get a new desk, a new bed, and make new friends. But I also knew that in this farmhouse, there would always, forever, be a light left on for me. "Outside!" Grandma yelled. "Nora, the cab is here!" I pulled my suitcase out to the porch. Grandpa was standing by the driveway, reaching out for the handle. I pulled it back. "Grandpa, I can roll it myself today." He looked at me, and for once, he didn't argue. He just nodded proudly. All right. Grandma locked the front door, looking over the yard one last time like she always did. "Drive safe," she told the cab driver. I laughed. "I am not the one driving." She glared at me. "Don't get smart with me." As the cab rolled down the dirt road toward the highway, the sun was just cresting the horizon. Brilliant gold light spilled across the endless green cornfields, catching the metallic blue shell of my suitcase in the trunk. The tires crunched over the gravel, a steady, rhythmic sound. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was the group chat. Dad. "Nora, today is move-in day. Have a safe trip." Mom. "Let us know as soon as you get to campus." Liam. "Good luck at college." Chloe. "Good luck." I looked at the screen, typed a quick reply, and hit send. "Thank you. I am heading out." Then, I slipped the phone back into my pocket. The chat remained on hide alerts. My heart no longer felt that agonizing, acidic ache it used to. I didn't need their text messages to prove that I was worthy of love, and I didn't need to aggressively shut them out to punish them for their belated guilt. They were my mom and dad, I accepted that. But my true home was this gravel road lined with oak trees. It was the quilts Grandma dried in the summer sun, and the silhouette of Grandpa waiting for me at the train station. It was the warmth that a house 750 miles away, a house I had occupied for barely 12 hours before walking out forever, could never, ever replace.